Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, welcome everybody. This is our MSX group user forums. My name is Derek Krebs, and yesterday we see a lot of you that are attending both days. Yesterday we were focused on Microsoft Manager Reporter on the reporting side, followed by Microsoft Forecaster on the budgeting side. We had an action-packed day of 5 one-hour sessions. Those, and along with today's sessions, will all be recorded, so if you want to review those or share with coworkers, we'll be sending an email out next week with a link to where you can download those recordings. These sessions are also CPE credit eligible, that you can then apply for those continuing education credits. And today's focus is going to be on Prospero. We have 5 one-hour sessions once again today, doing with a mixed bag of introductory concepts and beyond the basics, like intermediate and advanced concepts. So welcome one and all. I just have a few slides that I'm going to go through, followed by the bulk of the session. We'll be looking at the application itself. And then here's just a further agenda of what we're discussing today. I'll be starting this first one with an overall review of both the reporting and budgeting aspects within Prospero, followed by the next 2 sessions will be focused on reporting, and the last sessions of the day will be dealing with budgeting. And since they're so intertwined, the reporting and budgeting aspects, you'll get a lot of benefit in these sessions that will have some common denominators and tips and efficiencies to further share with you. My name again is Derek Krebs. I'm a senior consultant. I've been doing this for about 25 years, and like my credentials you see here, most of the founding staff of MSX Group and the staff members currently have similar backgrounds, where we 100% are devoted to reporting and budgeting. And we started approximately 25 years ago, myself included, at FRX Software. We had so good reporting and budgeting tools that Microsoft acquired us, and we worked internally at Microsoft close to 15 of those 25 years. And as we got acquired, approximately 10 years ago, we got spun off, and then our mission was to, yes, continue to service and support those Microsoft products, but in the meantime, we then developed Prospero to take what was 2 separate applications and come out to one nice seamless application. There's going to be a mixed bag of audience that I see, a lot of familiar names and faces and several new ones, mixed bag. We have some end users, both that currently own Prospero or maybe that are still using some of those Microsoft flagship products, followed by, I see a lot of partners who are looking to sell and deploy Prospero. So once again, welcome one and all, as I'll try to meet those needs of all of the audiences. And Prospero and the agenda, I'll be giving you a nice little overview, speaking also about the excellent conversions we have, taking all of your hard work of your Manager Reporter and FRX reports, we can convert them into Prospero to hit the ground running, including those people that are using Microsoft Forecaster. We have a nice little migration path to seamlessly transition to Prospero. And just those key aspects, again, just to repeat a couple items on the reporting and budgeting side. And throughout today and this session too, we'll be encouraging questions. So within that GoToWebinar control panel, a couple little notes to make on those would be, if that window is ever blocking your view, you have the orange arrow that could be clicked to the right or left to minimize or maximize that GoToWebinar control panel, which also you see a question and a chat area. So the question will probably be the easier area to field questions along the way. Otherwise, everybody is currently on a muted state. All right, so high-level things on Prospero, especially for those new people that I see on the call today. It's, yes, a one application instead of the 2 separate ones to do the reporting and budgeting / forecasting that I'll use sort of synonymously, budgeting and forecasting, and also help you on the analysis of your financial data. That financial data could be a wide range of actuals, budget forecast, including statistics, which I'm always a big fan of, to also include some key performance indicators in our reports. There's going to be also excellent graphing and dashboarding ability, even drill down to the account and transaction level. And what we did too was we took all of those years of efforts at Microsoft. We took all the good things within those Microsoft products and we brought them into Prospero, and wherever there are some deficiencies and shortcomings, we definitely improved upon them, as I'll shed a little bit more light upon those. Now this one slide, and actually it's two, we reflected on all of these years of the Microsoft world of, hey, what were some current challenges most people faced in their budgeting reporting side, and hey, how can we make it better, faster, stronger, and improve upon that? So I'll just chime a couple of these there, like the very first one, quoted a couple of times, where, yep, unfortunately, the Microsoft products haven't been touched for several years. They're being on sustained engineering mode, meaning, hey, there's end of life and death on those. But I always like to say we still support hundreds of customers still on those Microsoft flagship products, so we'll still be here to help you in that transition. And that's what also we get a lot of great customer feedback, because all of our support and consulting are so very familiar with those Microsoft products and Prospero. So that's some other nice differentiators of the MSX group and the Prospero application. On the security, especially those that are currently using Manager Porter, I might make some specific case points on this. In Manager Porter, it was very poor decentralized security, meaning in Manager Porter, you had to go to all your different trees and all the separate tree units within to secure those individually. Then secondly, you have to go into your Manager Porter report library and you had to secure all the individual folders, which stunk. We learned upon that, and we now have a nice little centralized security model. And if a person changes their security from department A, B, or more departments, we do not have to rerun our Prospero reports like you have to do so in the Manager Porter era. The third item, also in Manager Porter, was a very rigid security where you only had 4 roles. You had to live within those, but within Prospero, you can create different roles or groups based on the user access and capabilities that they have within the application. Followed by one other thought on security is Microsoft Forecaster was also very restrictive on the security, where it only allowed you security on one segment of your chart of account. Like I might have company, location, department. In Forecast, you only could secure one of those, but now across Prospero, we can secure across all the segments more nimbly. Item number 4, instead of double your work in 2 applications, it's now one single one. And then related to that, you had to do a lot of manual importing and exporting actuals and budgets to and from your budgeting system and your reporting system, where we've now taken out all those manual steps, where it's now Prospero seamlessly linking to your actual and budget data. And that also goes for all the general ledger segments like department, location, accounts. We're automatically reading from those, versus those people on Microsoft Forecaster, you always had to manually update Microsoft Forecaster with new account departments, and also go back to both Manager Porter lines/rows and Forecaster rows to add these new general ledger accounts, where that leads into the 5th item you're going to see in just a second, an awesome feature where we can use one single summary account like total expenses and expand upon that. That usually reduces and avoids report maintenance altogether, which was very tedious in the past. Item number 6, when people transitioned from Microsoft FRX to Manager Porter, Microsoft yanked away all of their output options, where in Manager Porter, you only could output to the viewer or the workspace. Versus Prospero, we've brought that back, meaning outputting directly to Excel, printer, PDF, or to the viewer/workspace. So that was definitely good feedback we got from our customer base as we transition to Prospero. This last slide, then I'll jump into the application. Graphing, there's really no ability for graphing. Let's say in Forecaster, it was very lame in Manager Porter, where you only could graph one single line or column, which that's why we didn't use it in Manager Porter, because it's so deficient. So we have nice 3-dimensional graphs you can drill into. Now I'm very fond of that 8th item, that whenever I drill into a report, I can then nimbly change the drill order without having to go to a 2nd, 3rd, or 4th report, where in years past I had to in the Microsoft world. Maybe the 10th item, statistics, just repeating that in our data warehouse within Prospero. separate from your general ledger. It's a very efficient data warehouse to reporting and storing budget and forecast, including statistics and non-general ledger data. A couple examples to non-general ledger data you'll see in this first hour might be taking some budgets and or actuals down to the employee level for modeling staffing costs, which is a very large component. Or second example of non-GL data would be on the revenue and cost of goods sold side. Perhaps I want to take it down to the customer or product level, which those might not be segments in my general ledger, but we do have that ability to include within our reporting and budgeting. And the last maybe line there too, another thing that we think we're proud of differentiating ourselves is not going to cost you an arm and leg. Usually we find ourselves on products that have similar, robust, feature-rich capabilities. We usually find ourselves about maybe a third to half of the price component on that. So there's just a little recap to set the stage of a few little overview items. I'll probably now bounce and we'll be passing these PowerPoint downloads as well along the recording links to you next week. Now, as I transition in an overview of the application, I'm going to do so through maybe 2 or 3 user perspectives. One might be the CFO that want to see all of my company's data across many location departments at a perhaps more summarized flavor. Second perspective, I might take you of 3, might be a power user, like most of you on this phone call might be in that shoes in the finance and accounting area. And maybe a third role or perspective would be an end user one. Now, what I'm currently broadcasting might be the first role of a CFO or board member who wants to see a nice little quick snapshot of their data. And really what we're looking at too, to throw some lingo that people are maybe getting trained and versed on Prospero further, is this is simply a report collection. A group of reports I can seamlessly run and open in one mass, multiple different reports. This is looking at the report data in the workspace/viewer. However, let me also show you briefly that I have a couple of Excel output items here that us accountants and management will always be still in the Excel world, but we're going to try to wean you off of that because it's more efficient drilling and looking at the viewer that you'll see, and also it's not secure, it's not real time, etc. Now, this so happens to be the similar type of report collection of, we'll call it a board package every month. I'm the board member. I get an income statement, this first Excel sheet, or report number 2, the balance sheet across maybe the multi-company that we have, like Europe, US, and our elimination company. And even this elimination company usually exists in your general ledger, but there's been numerous Prospero clients that stored these eliminations manually or offline. Or it might be another example, I'm about ready to acquire a new entity. I don't have to go through the long, arduous task of doing a whole general ledger conversion. We can still link to numerous general ledger environments. We have over 20 plus interfaces to different GL systems and versions, so giving a lot of ammunition to take anything you've been doing manually or offline to include within this Prospero application. And third and final report might be a cash flow. And that's the same type of report collection I'm going to an Excel flavor for. And how about third and finally, perhaps I want to maybe efficiently send this out to PDF, where here might be looking at my multi-company, like all company, an income statement of actual versus budget. Or as I page down, there might be report or entity number 2 and further foremost on that. So I like to paraphrase that, saying you have options of how you want to distribute and look at your data. There's a couple of examples for it. As I go back to this CFO sort of role and position, I'm going to still continue with it just for a couple moments. I'm going to expand upon this one little report, like here in the top left is my income statement, or in the bottom left, maybe the same type of income statement, but where I'm seeing my different regions or divisions side by side for sales, marketing, R&D. I'm going to go ahead and just maximize this for giving some real estate room. And I'm always fond of analyzing data as opposed to processing it. So let me even analyze some sales data. Now, when I drill into a report, we have the ability to predefine my drill order and then Great also to be able to change the drill order on the fly. My first click, I drilled into my US and Europe, my entities or companies first and foremost, and then my second click or drill down might be the different locations like Miami, San Francisco, Denver. I even can go down to the account and transaction level, which I'll do so in just a second on another example, as maybe a manager has more limited viewing capability, but this user could also go to that level. However, what I'm going to do is I can nimbly bounce around between tab number 1 or tab number 2. A lot of other applications you have to close and reopen separate windows, but I can nimbly bounce back and forth. Another thing that almost seems expected is when I drill in, I'm drilling across all columns, meaning actual prior year budget, including variances. However, a lot of our competition, and like we say we're better and we differentiate them by, we can see all columns. Most other applications, when you drill in, you only get to see actual, not prior year and budget side by side, which I despise sort of, as I still work with some applications over 25 years, dealing with a few separate ones here. Let me now close out. I closed out the locations. This brought me back to my first drill down by company, and then nimbly, instead of me bouncing to a second, third, or fourth report, I'm going to come up here on the toolbar and click the button called Change the Drill Order. My first click was by company, then by location top down, and as it reads above, I'm going to drag and drop. How about I want to quickly see who departmentally was good or bad? And then I'm just going to come up here and now drill in. Instead of by the location and company, or vice versa respectively, I'm immediately going down to the department. And then I could continue going down further as described. Now there's the different companies maybe within, but a different perspective to that. And just recapping, repeat, changing the drill order, nimbly on the fly, just dragging and dropping. Now this account level detail might be after maybe a third or fourth click, and I can easily come up here and drag that somewhere in between. And let me even now transition to an end user's perspective to discuss similar items in that regard. Now for this end user, excuse me as I have a few different windows and sessions open here. When any person logs into Prospero, what they're going to land to is this nice quick launch area, which I call my one-click favorites. You see some headings here like, how about every month, Derek is now the manager speaking. I'll have reports and charts, and how about you, my boss or the controller CFO, you send me 2 reports. Report number 1 here at the top, actual budget. Report number 2 here at the bottom, a rolling 12-month. Or how about secondly, you see the column headed input. That just means, hey, it's that time of year where you would like me to do budgeting. I'm going to first of all open up this report, and then when I do so, there's this button here in the toolbar. I'm looking at what I'll call location 1 or department A. When I change the report prompt, I just want to emphasize that a couple of things. Throughout my session and the day, we have a couple of different segments here. In our general ledger, we have a location, like this one user simply has for the location Denver access only. And then what I'm going to come up here and do is just show you in this little pick list, they're limited to only seeing one location, 41,000. And that's what we call a user's assignments. Now, along with the location that I might be restricted to, the same thing goes for department, company, etc. Now, one other general ledger segment you do not see in this list is our account segment, because here in the background, like revenue expenses, my accounts usually are defined in our line set, but we're going to show you a lot of cool report examples throughout the day where I can bring in different components into either my line or column, or maybe third as the report prompt, like this window I'm being prompted for these items. 1 or 2 other thoughts related to that is, and I wish I could rattle off all the 20 or 30 great new features, there's probably more. One of those is, as I'm now secondly looking at department, great thing, new feature, is Prospero, we create this tree called all, which automatically gets created and automatically gets maintained versus the other Microsoft products that I'll maybe reference here that most people are transitioning from. You always had to manually create those. So there's going to be a nice little way to do it, but we're also going to show you how you can maybe create your own trees that maybe subgroup these in different regions, etc. by. Another last thought related to this window is company is not a segment in our general ledger. And I see several of you on this phone call have actually personally worked with a few. If you're in a multi-company environment, many people do not have the company as a segment in your general ledger, but what we do is we create a virtual segment related to that. And let me even just do one side step there. Usually I don't like to do too many side steps, but I'm going to show you here logged in as administrator. I have this segments area, and here's the natural accounts automatically read from the general ledger. And like when I was talking about Microsoft Forecaster, you always had to manually add those, but these are automatically read from your general ledger. Same thing for location, automatically read from your general ledger. However, let's say I want to budget a new department. I can easily add that in seconds and it would automatically be included in our all tree where I do not have to do anything. Here is that company segment. I quoted that we create as a extra virtual segment. That way I can seamlessly do reporting on that. And this company 9 might not even be in my general ledger, or maybe I'm going to budget a new acquisition company. And then the last little thought on segments goes to the thought about if I wanted to add another general ledger segment, we would maybe have discussions on our pre-planning calls about what other data outside of your general ledger. How about it's very important to me. We have about 10 products that I really want to report and capture that is not my general ledger. So we can come up here and add that extra product ability and either import into that very easily, or better yet, we even can link directly to another database if we decide to do so. So there's how I can add some non-general ledger segments. One example of a couple that we'll provide throughout this day and session. Let me return back to the end user that I was just in, as I was talking about more just some of our structure and other capabilities that we could leverage here in Prospero. Let's now role play. I'm the manager. You're my boss, the CFO. You want me to explain to you any variances. Notice here the little icon is a nice little indicator where I've added a note that you or others can review. And here is to the right the annotations. I'm simply going to come up here and thumbtack that to not auto hide it. And what you're nicely going to see is a time date stamp and what user added it, as I'm logged in as Derek, a generic manager number 1, and I gave it a note like, hey, here's some new staff, as I was maybe short and sweet on one of the sessions yesterday. And I just clicked on this add button here, and then maybe you, the CFO, or my boss saying, yeah, you can add a note saying Derek and I spoke, and here's our action plan. That way, anybody else reviewing this data, they can efficiently see the notes and collaboration we made without having to do other offline manual ways. Let me now further share that sort of drill down spoken earlier, like I'm now going to drill into sales data here. And we even can go down to the account and transaction level. Now the transaction level, I'm currently now broadcasting. We have 2 additional columns we did not see on the earlier levels, because here might be where I see the vendor customer. We have generic customer numbers, but it might say their name here for maybe legal reasons why we did generic numbers there. But I have all of this information down to the transaction level, including vendor or customer, and I do not need general ledger access. I simply need to have access to Prospero. Or going back to Excel, maybe board members or other users, maybe they receive their data in Excel or PDF version. But usually we recommend secure, electronic, real-time, graphical, down to transaction data. Keyword I just mentioned there, graphical. Let me now come into a report where I can easily not only looking at the financial data and what we call the report view, but I also can see it graphically. Now, of 2 examples on graphing, as I'm just going to close a window or 2 down, would be this original CFO had a few different report windows open where really I just came up here and maybe showed them side by side. I sort of call this a report collection or dashboard. Again, getting some lingo down there for some of the new users transition to Prospero. Now I'm going to further take one of these graphs and interact with it in a larger window here. And looking back at this income statement, this button here called Display as Chart, it's then going to render in one of maybe 7 to 8 different graph types. And even I can drill into the graph. So here as I'm analyzing maybe revenue there in blue versus my expenses in red, this immediately went down to the first level, my locations. Or if I go down another level, it might be by the company or department based on my drill order. At any one of these stages of drill through, I could do a couple of things. One would be I could switch back to the report view, meaning I just drilled into revenue. It's looking at now my different departments. So I now have that in an excellent view. And if I come up here and export this to Excel, yep, there's no smoke and mirrors. Everything is seamless and easy behind that. And once this renders, there's maybe if I wanted to do more ad hoc data with that or share it with others. Behind the scenes for graphing, no, you don't have to be an Excel pro to do this graphing. No, you don't have to buy some other third-party module like Power BI or some other Tableau dashboarding system, which that's usually some other people's story that's needed for their graphing ability. All you really need to do literally is in one click. I just need a 1-minute tutorial. On the chart tab, this is actually a report. Notice here's my line and column. And I'm now going to come to this tab called the chart. All you have to do is turn on this button to allow the chart, and then there's various chart types you can choose from. So when we coach and train people, I just need literally 1 minute of your time, just like I shared with you right now. So I love this story and differentiator versus others. So thank you for that. Continuing, that was a little look at some of the reporting side. Drilling down to the account and transaction, graphical view. Now on this budget versus actual report, where I added a memo or note to you, my boss, of why I'm explaining some variances, like this icon indicator did such. How about now you want me to budget for the months or years ahead? On the quick launch area, there's my one-click favorite to the report. I even have some historical published reports here. I always can go back in time to review old reports, but I'm always a fan to give people a new report, maybe a 12-month rolling trend, to not have to go back to old reports that does not include my current good data. Just my own little soapbox thoughts I'll throw in along the way. Now here might be a shortcut when I launch Prospero that you've asked me now to start budgeting ahead. Now within this budget, I'm going to open up actually 2 different screens. And this leverages the same type of line sets and columns. Now in the budget, this second window I just showed you, it might have a different look and feel because I'm currently in a sales department because I might be in charge of 5 departments within my location. And I'm now currently open up this for the sales department, where I have products here in yellow, like product 10 motors, 20 compressors, etc. Now what you see here for the products, these are not in my general ledger, but I can still budget and or record actuals to those, including these statistics like units sold, sales price, etc. Those are not my general ledger. Maybe my general ledger, I have just account 4,900 and 5,900, but you can easily add statistics in seconds that we'll show you in later sessions throughout the day. Second example, to non-general ledger segments, I'm going to go back to my original Department A here that I might have closed for just a moment. And this is a pure expense only department. And I'm going to lead into human resources modeling as well. Down to the employee, which is another example of data or segments or dimensions, employee dimension, that is not my general ledger. This data input screen, the colors can be anything you want. I like to have rows in gray that are locked from input. versus how about rows in white? Yes, you, the budgeter, you key into the rows in white. Here's some examples of salary dollar, gray and locked from direct input, including statistics, either yes or maybe not in the general ledger, but yes, I can then see hours, FTE, actual and or budget here to the right, including some taxes. So here's our payroll tax where it starts high and tapers off on the human resources screen. I could do this modeling, and here's where I have flashbacks of the hundreds of customers I've helped over these 20 plus years. I paraphrase it usually for staffing that I see people modeling or budgeting by 3 common ways. The first 2 would be on this tab, either by their person's name, like Bob or Sally, or secondly by their position. Like I might need this many production workers, this many registered nurses, or this many professors or adjunct people, depending on what industry lingo you have. The second way, outside of the name or position on this tab, might be on this main tab. I could do it statistically based. And this might even go back to this earlier screen, like we were keying in some product data. Let's now say product 10 might be position 1, or we'll call it registered nurses, or here product 20, let's call it position number 2, LPNs or CNAs for some of the healthcare lingo talk, where instead of units and price, maybe I'm going to key in some hours needed based on maybe revenue levels up above. So I call that statistically based, more by some rates and hours that I could break out in any way possible. Now, a confident reply I like saying of the product and our experience it with is there's really not been a budget model or not been a report need that I've not been able to meet inside the application for its power, ease, and flexibility. So we welcome everybody, especially new people on this phone call. We have an excellent free trial version of Prospero. We even can take a sampling of your FX Manager Reporter reports, bring it into the application, and we'll probably remind you of that on a couple of sessions subsequently. Returning back to that other budget input screen, let me just show you one thing behind the scenes that would be a very long, arduous process in most of our competitors' human resource and modeling. That is, a lot of these benefits, like you see health insurance, income tax, payroll tax, etc., I could easily, as an administrator, define that with one simple table done behind the scenes. Now, what I'm doing is I'm opening up that same budget that, for simplicity, just like reports, it uses a simple line and a column. And one other thought related to that, I'm going to call that my default line and column. Because if I laid out all your department locations on a table, I might put them in 2 or 3 piles. Like here might be one pile of my revenue departments that might have one row format or line set with these accounts and statistics in it. Or maybe a second pile or group of department locations might be my administrative one that have pure expenses only. So this might be the default majority of my location departments will use this line set, but then an override tab, whenever I pulled up that department 200, which so happens to be our sales department, across any location, I told the system to use this line set called sales, like we have some other industry demo specific line sets that I can maybe custom tailor to my area of the organization that might have a different template instead of one size or shoe fits all. Now, speaking of this location, there's going to be another example of trees. Now, looking at the location, this is a nice little list view that you see of all your ones read directly from your general ledger, but oftentimes it's nice to see it in a graphical view. There's that all tree I quoted earlier, automatically created and automatically maintained. However, it has no subgroups, but how about I want to take like San Francisco, Seattle, these with a 3 prefix might be a certain region. So down below, here's my region tree. Oftentimes we recommend using ranges or wildcards, which maybe here's all my Midwest with the 4s, and I probably should have done West in the same way, but we're just doing a second example where they could be individual onesie twosies if you do not have a clean chart, like clean chart all the 4 is my Midwest. So here's another example where I do not have to update my tree as maybe new Midwest location apartments get added since I'm using a wildcard, but I'll still be able to look at a report very nimbly at the grand total or the individual ones, but we don't see the individual ones in the tree. This is more just the definition of it. And continuing, that was just a high level on the line and overrides for my budgeting. I'm going to look here to the Human Resources tab. I simply have a top half and a bottom half. Now the top half really tells the system what expense accounts for budgeting do you hit. A lot of companies only have one salary account and only one line here, but in our demo, we just like to show you a couple because I can get more granular. I can get as simple or as micro specific as I need, because here's an example of maybe hourly and salary positions, different default rates that can be overwritten, defined by individual, including bonuses, overtime, commission, which I didn't show you all the details of the HR input screen, but here's really my overall assumptions. And then we're going to have some budgeting sessions at the tail end of today. Now the bottom half, let me wrap up with, would be benefits. Here is account 7500. I only have one general ledger account for payroll tax because notice I can easily break it down by the first two lines of FICA and Medicare. Now, as I'm showing you where I, again, reading direct from the general ledger of those accounts, here might be one of two ways of benefits as a percent of salary, with a limit like the top line, or without a limit. Or secondly, benefits commonly could be a fixed dollar per month that they work by either full-time equivalency or head count. You can define the math by. And then looking here to the right, instead of one flat rate for health insurance, I might want more. And then in our demonstration, these columns, I'm going to about ready to add one or two as an example. You can define what these benefit little fields are, and then you can define these choices, because maybe I have two extra choices of PPO plan or a HMO plan. So I just added easily a couple extra lines and choices based on your budget assumptions, like for this health, different names or rates you want for those. And then the other key field here is the fixed dollar by month. Now here is a couple examples, because within our MSX group, I reside in California. We have employees in about 12 different states within MSX group. Like we have a whole support team in our Denver, Colorado, where we're originally based out of the FRX software. We have development team in New Jersey, sales and marketing in various other cities and states. So here is maybe some different state taxes I could easily add to this list. And whenever I import people, we'll call it 100 people in our organization, I can then import that seamlessly, regardless, does not matter what payroll system I'm using. I would simply need a column for Derek's name, what department Derek's in, and how much Derek makes, along with maybe Derek having a California next to his name, and maybe Derek have family next to his name. That way I could import it in as a nice little starting point. I'm going to come up here. There's like a workers' comp example. I'm going to click on the button here. I'm going to add a fourth column and a fifth column, because how about I want to add a pension or 401k. And as I click on a couple choices, I'll simply call them A, B, or C, because maybe this might be a 1% contributor, or a 2% contributor, or 3% contributor, along with any limits or fixed rates that we do want. Or some other examples might be there in the background, like cell phone, yes or no, transportation allotment, life insurance, yes or no, or whatever. So simple table, I easily can come up here and add to it. Now behind the scenes, I'm going to go back to this budget input screen. There are no formulas. Going back to this income statement tax expense, there are no formulas in the system I have to maintain. It's just that one simple table. However, there's about 3 or 4 products I've worked with over the years. What takes me seconds in Prospero would take me hours within other applications. So if you're ever pursuing some others, have them show you behind the scenes. That we always like to be transparent up and front. By accountants, for accountants is also some key lingo we use for the Prospero application for its user friendliness. Another thing related to that is I am so fond of the row, column, or tree reusable nature. On the home ribbon, I'm logged in as a Power Administrator user, so I have access to see my different reports within the system and or budgets. And then here is a list where here might be report 1, 2, 3. I can see who created it, who last modified it, when, and then I'm going to sort all these reports by the line set being used. Great. All of you using those Microsoft products, I love that as well, because that was why it was such an industry standard used by hundreds of thousands of people, reusing the same row, column, or tree over and over and over. So my setup and maintenance is so much easier. Otherwise, and a lot of our competitors, sort of how we phrase as an Excel add-ins, what you would see here would be a bunch of Excel files. You would have no clue of who created it, who last modified it. You have no clue of what row, column, or tree are shared. Now, another example to that is, I'm guessing, but how about, let's say these 3 reports, I think, use the same column, and management wants me to add a new column for my last year actual to add to it. I'd have to maybe open each up manually and add those additional columns, which even I get scared saying that, but here is that user-friendly nature to it. And let me even take this one step further. This is a great little list of all the reports within the system. What I also have is, we added, especially for some of our large public companies, looking at under tools activity log, what the system's then going to also do, and very detailed, because maybe auditors in town, they want to know who exactly modified what item and when. So here you're going to see a time date stamp, what user, as we have a lot of generic user, but it's say Bob or Sally, and they actually modified these specific elements. Like here's a line or column that maybe someone was playing around with and adjusted. So that takes it one step further to that. As I go back to report, thinking about some other pain points and inefficiencies you've lived with all those years. One was, whenever, like in this income statement report, whenever I add a new revenue or expense, I would always have to hopefully remember all the different line sets and manually update that, not only in my reporting tool, but I'd have to go to my budgeting tool to do the same thing, double my work. However, in Prospero, we usually can reduce or usually avoid all that maintenance altogether simply by using what we call a summary account and expanding, like this expenses is a summary account. I'm expanding above to show the detail. And the line set, there's no trickery. In the line set, I have a couple of options. I could do it the old-fashioned way, like individual accounts or ranges, but the better good way is looking at this expense node. This is, again, a summary account. Usually, most Prospero customers only have one account tree, including both balance sheet and income statement, but we have a couple of trees because in some of our cash flow modeling, we have our separate cash tree that breaks out maybe some non-cash items for my statement of cash flow. But here's my master tree, expenses in my account tree. That might be all accounts 6,000 to 7,999, or rephrased, I do not have to update this account tree, nor I do not have to update my line set, because simply here in the background, we can show all the accounts either above or below. And then what 0 means, it means show me every individual account. Versus a second example, here might be gross profit. If I wanted to show one level down of gross profit, it might show these 4 items if it's one level down. And then here's just a few other examples, like maybe one level down of cost of goods sold might be my labor and material. And then here, furthermore, a lot of times I'll do ranges or wildcards wherever possible, but if not, you can have categoried. And let me actually show you this tree behind the scenes. Looking at trees, I was just speaking of our natural account, like revenue expense balance sheet, and usually most only have one tree, this net income. Here's that expenses I'll continue with. Now, if I decide to change my mind, like, okay, management wants this one account grouped into maybe my expense area, or vice versa, I'll drag it back. I even can grab multiple accounts all in one fell swoop, move them around very nimbly and easily. And that could go for the same location or company or departments. Now, last thing I like to wrap up with in this account tree is I can right mouse click on top of this summary account, and I want to see where it's used, because if I change my mind, what am I impacting? And what's great is I can see these are all the different areas in the product that this account is used by, either a line, column, or report. So that again means I don't have to go to all those separate Excel files or reports. I don't have to go back and always continue to maintain those. I just change so once in the tree, maybe not at all using that range, and then I can see downward stream. I do not have to update all these. I simply change my one account tree area. Huge win. That I love those new abilities as a consultant. That way less phone calls, but I'm always here to help clients anyway, to bring the easy button along the way. All right, let's see. I have approximately 15 minutes remaining this session. Let me first of all see if there's any general questions. We also have several of our consulting and support and development team members on today's phone call in case we have a variety of questions to field. And then how about Nick or Noah? There's two other members of our consulting team especially. Are there any other features that you're fond of that maybe I have overlooked that you think I'd like to share?
Well, you seem to have everybody in rapture because there are no questions in the queue, but I think you're doing well. So continue on.
Okay. All right. Let me continue back to the budgeting, because some of my 10,000 foot level features, I think I checked off most of those. So let me go back a little bit on the budgeting side. I was speaking about these gray rows locked from input. We looked at the HR area for a 30-second recap, where here, let me even take this a few extra moments further, where I have two columns of when that employee starts and ends. I even can break it out by month. If I have any seasonality, different hours are FTE within, hourly or salary designation. Now, looking at this allocation column, I might have both hourly and salary people in this button here. Maybe I want to see everybody hourly based or everybody full-time equivalency based, along with different pay raises. Like how about this person here starts making $45,000. Usually I import everybody in with, let's say, a cost of living pay raise of 2%, but I could then change that after the fact for any merit increases, differences to the standard that you define and import, so I don't have to do so much edits. And then looking here to the right, by name, maybe bonuses, overtime, and then all these other benefits. Usually I pre-populate, but there are some other details behind that. Continuing forward to, within the budget screen, how about I'm in the marketing department? We have one general ledger account 7350 for advertising, but I can come up here and easily insert line items. So on the fly, I can maybe break out why I'm budgeting such large big tickets. That way you or others reviewing my budget can see, all right, here's why Derek is maybe budgeting this detail. I also can come up on the toolbar. Looking here to the right, we have a couple of columns that I love for comparison purposes for me and my end user, like prior year actual and budget, including variances. Now these actuals, that's real-time read from the database, meaning I don't have to import and export actuals and budgets to and from my reporting system and budgeting system, which many of you are probably still doing today, or manual. The button I'm now referring to regarding columns is maybe I want to show an annotations column. So here, as I'm reviewing this person's budget, I can quickly see any noteworthy items, who added that note, when, a time date stamp, and what their memo or note is, like I shared earlier. And maybe I'll even go back to, here is maybe after the fact, meaning after we've recorded actual budget, maybe me explaining those variances. So this is what we call a published report, where I'm adding these annotations. Or here is maybe forward looking in my budget, where I'm maybe giving you, my boss, some memos or notes why I'm doing so. And then you see also these icon indicators. There's also very nice audit trail history of who changed an account and when. So if I put my cursor anywhere on a given line, this button called history, you're going to see some nice little time date stamps of who added that item and when. And then here I'm just, I probably should have looked ahead of time to an account that did have some changes made. And even I'm going to change it from X dollar to Y dollar. like from 7,000 to 8,000, I even can come up here and copy that across. Without doing all these extra key strokes, I'll just copy that 8,000 across, save it. Now I just did a good old Control S, but since this is a very Microsoft Office look and feel, another thing people applaud us and we differentiate by, it has a very familiar interface. It looks like Excel, but Excel on steroids. It has all the familiar toolbar, cut, copy, paste, right click, etc. And then as I did change that value, history button, you'll then see a little time date stamp here of Derek, modified it from what dollar to what dollar. So if someone later made a change here, they would see that. Audit trail history within my budget. That way I can see what cooks were in the kitchen, brewing up the pot here. Segueing, we saw some human resources, we saw some line item details, memos, annotations, audit trail history. We also saw some revenue modeling down to segments not in the general ledger. Let me now wrap up with talking about the capital side. So here might be some new capital purchases I'm budgeting for my department, along with the corresponding depreciation of those newly budgeted items. And I simply come to this capital tab and I can come up here and insert. I can give it any ID. And then here, the description. How about I'm going to buy some Prospero software here. And then in a given month, all right, I love what I see. So how about in the month of May, I'm going to budget here. How about $5,000? Or even better yet, I'm going to budget because there's a nice subscription plan. It's only about $100 per month. So I'm going to maybe budget $100 for that subscription to Prospero. So everything you're seeing here, I could do so with that little low investment. Now coming back to the main tab, this will then flow to the Department of Depreciation here with this input screen. And let me now segue, because that's maybe the individual manager doing the input. And related to that, I'm now as the power user, I'm going to open up a balance sheet and cash flow budget, and then followed by, I'm going to wrap it up doing a rolling forecast screen. So the only minor difference here in the balance sheet and cash flow is maybe two things. One would be I would have different line set of balance sheet and cash flow accounts or statistics or formulas. Second main difference of this balance sheet input budget or forecast would be a column to the left, which is my beginning balances. And these, once again, could be read directly from the general ledger based on whenever you opened up this input screen, which I'm going to open it up for different time to see how it's dynamically changing in just a moment. Now here's an example of net income. That's a component of my balance sheet budget. Notice here that account called T-net, that's simply in our account tree, like we looked at total expenses. Net income is just that. It's all my revenue expenses, and here to the right, that's for all my location departments. So that's an easy definition of my line set to automatically link and grab all of that for this consolidated balance sheet. And last little example or two of a few little flavors of budget screens. There may be a second flavor. Let me open up a third one on this forecast, and I'm going to open it up in two different time elements. Instead of just budgeting once a year, like I'm lazy, I like to exercise, I'm going to exercise more regularly, meaning if I budget and forecast, I see most companies that do, instead of just once a year a budget, if they're doing it more often, like every quarter, every month, usually I see them holding to their top line goal setting better and their bottom line meeting. So I'll jump off of my soapbox here, but I'm a big fan of more frequently budgeting. Now, when I open it up for period 4, what you're going to see here quickly are 4 columns that got added. Once again, this is automatically read from the database. I did not have to manually import and export data back and forth. And now I'm going to simply come up here and reopen this now for period 5. We might be 1 month later. Another column of actuals are going to pop up here. And then I can then budget out either the remaining months of the year, or I'm also a fan for multi-year planning, because along with the remaining months of the year, like I'll call this a 5 plus 7, meaning 5 months actual, 7 months budget or forecast, I'm going to have some additional columns to the right where I want you, the budgeters, to give me your estimate for maybe the next quarter or years, plural, whatever you wish to in their column definition. As this now refreshes for period 5, you're going to now see 5 columns of actual, the remaining months of budget, and then looking here to the right, yep, Derek, the CFO, now asked us to give me the budget or forecast for year 2 or 3 in the future that you see headed 2022 and 2023. Either single annual columns, they could be quarters, they could be months, they could be days, anything possible. Now, what also is possible is I might even have an input screen that has different segmentation in either my line or column. And here's just one other example to that, where in the Microsoft Forecaster budgeting product, it was very rigid. But here now, at a very high level, instead of time, maybe I'm just doing a quick little high level annual forecast by company 1, 2, 3, and elimination, where here's one example of how I have companies in my columns. Or another example, perhaps columns with locations in them. Instead of me going to 3 different screens for 3 different locations, maybe there might be some modeling I want to do more centralized or top down. And in some of our budgeting sessions, especially the one I'm leading and the 5th one of today, we'll further go through a few of these screens further. But now here might be the different locations I have. There might be some intercompany items going to and from them based on what modeling you need, but there's maybe 3 or 4 examples of budgeting and forecasting screens. All right, and then as I wind down to the last couple of minutes here, as I like to maybe paraphrase what you saw in this first hour, here are some of what we call those differentiators, like a single product instead of double your work, easy interface, interchangeable row, column, or tree, graphing, drill down, changing drill order, conversions from FX and Manager Porter and Forecaster, so we can hit the ground running literally in a couple hours, couple days, versus most other ones. We see implementation people say, Derek, they're quoting me 6 to 12 weeks to get up and running, which ours is usually just a couple of days. You're up and running. All right, and let's now, other ways you can find out more about the application, including any demonstrations, product training. One easy one would be info, the email info@msxgroup.com. Otherwise, the phone number and website down below. So I'll thank you, everybody that's live, for your time and attention, or later viewing this recording. And let me pass it back to the others on this phone call in case there are any other words you'd like to add.
Nothing for me, Derek. I think you did a good job. You covered a lot of ground.
You know, Derek, we did have a whole day yesterday on Management Reporter and Forecaster. We have a lot of similarities in Prospero, making it pretty easy for a transition from those products to Prospero. You know, the development path that we followed for Prospero was, you know, taking the features that we loved from those products, including FRX as well, and putting them into Prospero. So if you're currently one of the users of Management Porter or Prospero, Forecaster or FRX, you'll see a lot of similarities and an easy transition.
And there's our agenda also I'll conclude with. So this is our first hour of 5 sessions today. The next one will start in approximately 15 minutes at 12:15 Eastern. So thanks again for joining, and hope you can stick around throughout the day. Otherwise, maybe future recording. Otherwise, have a nice day.